The mining colony of Kesselanine burned under an orange sky, and Sergeant Marcus Cole watched his squad die one by one. Plasma fire rained down from the hills where the Valkyrie had set their ambush. The reptilian soldiers moved with deadly precision through the smoke and rubble. Marcus pressed his back against the shattered wall of a storage building and checked his rifle. 3 rounds left, and at least 40 enemies closing in from all directions. "Command, this is Reaper 7. He spoke into his communicator with a calm voice that betrayed nothing of the chaos around him. "Extraction zone is compromised, I repeat. Extraction zone is compromised, requesting immediate evac at secondary coordinates." Stag answered him. The Valkyrie had jammed all communications across the sector. Private Chun fell next, a plasma bolt burning through his chest before he could even scream. Marcus watched the young soldier collapse and felt something cold settle in his stomach. They had walked straight into a trap, and now his entire team was paying the price for intelligence failures back in headquarters. He moved through the ruins with practiced efficiency, firing his last 3 rounds and taking down 2 Valkyrie scouts. The aliens were fast, faster than any human could hope to be, their scaled bodies built for combat on 100 different worlds. But Marcus had been fighting these creatures for 15 years, and he knew their weaknesses, their overconfidence, their rigid tactical formations, their absolute belief that humans were inferior prey animals. His rifle clicked empty. He threw it aside and drew his combat knife. "Come on then," he whispered to himself. "Let us see what you have got." The first Valkyrie warrior came around the corner and died with a blade through his throat. Marcus caught the falling alien and used his body as a shield against the plasma fire from 2 more soldiers. He charged forward, closing the distance before they could adjust their aim, and killed them both with brutal efficiency. But there were too many. There were always too many. A heavy blow struck his back and sent him sprawling. He rolled and came up fighting, but 3 more Valkyrie tackled him to the ground. Clawed hands tore the knife from his grip. Scaled fists pounded his face until blood filled his mouth and darkness crept at the edges of his vision. "Bind him," a cold voice commanded in the guttural Valkyrie language. "This one fights like a nest guardian. He may have value." Marcus felt metal restraints snap around his wrists. He tested them immediately, feeling the cold bite of alloy designed to hold creatures far stronger than humans. They hauled him to his feet, and he got his first clear look at the Valkyrie commander, a massive warrior in ornate armor that marked him as an overseer, one of the highest ranks in their military hierarchy. The overseer studied Marcus with yellow reptilian eyes. His forked tongue flicked out to taste the air, reading chemical signatures the humans could never detect. "You smell of death," the overseer said, switching to heavily accented Terran Standard. "Your body carries the scent of many kills, not just today, but over many years." He leaned closer, and Marcus could see the curiosity burning in those alien eyes. "What manner of human are you?" Marcus said nothing. He simply stared back at the towering alien and memorized every detail of his face. "No matter," the overseer continued. "I am Krethan, and you are now property of the Valkyrie Dominion. Your knowledge belongs to us, and we have ways of extracting it." He gestured to his soldiers. "Take him to the cruiser. Prepare an interrogation cell." They dragged Marcus through the burning colony, past the bodies of human civilians and Terran soldiers alike. He counted every step, noted every guard position, cataloged every weapon he saw. This was what his training had prepared him for: capture, interrogation, survival behind enemy lines. The Valkyrie transport ship waited at the edge of the colony. Its sleek design, a stark contrast to the bulkier human vessels. They threw Marcus into a holding cage with 3 other captured soldiers, all of them wounded and terrified. "Sergeant Cole," one of them whispered, recognizing the insignia on his torn uniform. "Thank God. What do we do?" Marcus looked at the young corporal. The man could not have been more than 20 years old, barely out of basic training. Fear radiated from him like heat from a fire. "We survive," Marcus answered quietly. "We watch, we learn, and we wait for our moment." The transport lifted off, and through the small viewport, Marcus watched Kessler 9 shrink below them. The Valkyrie fleet hung in orbit like a swarm of predators. Dozens of warships that had crushed the human defense force in less than 6 hours. This was the reality of the war humanity was losing, pushed back system by system, world by world. But Marcus had not survived 15 years of combat by accepting defeat. The cruiser that received them was called the Dominion's Wrath, a command vessel belonging to Overseer Crethon himself. Marcus memorized its layout as guards marched him through corridors of dark metal and harsh lighting. 21 guards on this deck alone. He counted them twice to be certain. Their patrol patterns were predictable, rotating every 15 minutes with military precision. They separated him from the other prisoners and threw him into a cell deep in the ship's bowels. The door sealed with a hiss of hydraulics, and Marcus found himself alone in a small room, with bare walls and a single harsh light overhead. He sat down on the cold floor and closed his eyes. His body ached from a dozen wounds, and exhaustion pulled at him like weights tied to his limbs. But his mind remained sharp, cycling through scenarios and possibilities. The Valkyrie thought they had captured a simple soldier, a source of intelligence to be drained and discarded. They did not understand what a Grim Reaper truly was. His unit had been created specifically for situations like this, operatives trained to function behind enemy lines, to turn capture into opportunity, to make the enemy regret ever taking them alive. Marcus smiled in the darkness of his cell. The Valkyrie believed humanity was weak because humans lacked claws and scales and natural weapons. They saw soft skin and assumed soft spirits. But humanity had not conquered Earth by being gentle. His species had clawed their way to dominance through 10,000 years of blood and war and suffering. The aliens had made a terrible mistake bringing him aboard this ship. They just did not know it yet. Marcus leaned his head back against the wall and began to plan. Somewhere above him, Overseer Crethon was probably congratulating himself on capturing a human soldier. Soon enough, the alien would learn the truth about what humanity could do when pushed into a corner, and by then it would be far too late. The moment came on the 4th day, and Marcus Cole was ready. They were transferring him to a different section of the ship for a new round of interrogation. 2 guards flanked him while a 3rd walked ahead to clear the corridor. His hands were bound in front of him by magnetic restraints designed to hold creatures twice his strength. But the Valkyrie had made one critical error. They had bound his hands in front rather than behind. Marcus had spent 72 hours studying every aspect of his captivity. He knew the exact weight of the restraints, the precise timing of guard rotations, the layout of every corridor they had marched him through. More importantly, he had noticed something during his beatings. When one of the guards shifted his stance, there was a half-second gap in their formation. Half a second was all he needed. The guard ahead of them stopped to check a doorway, and for one brief instant, the 2 soldiers behind Marcus were not perfectly positioned. He moved without thinking, without hesitation, pure muscle memory taking control. His thumb dislocated with a wet pop as he forced it out of its socket. The pain was nothing compared to what he had already endured. The restraint slipped just enough for him to slide his hand free. And then he was in motion. Guard 1 never saw him coming. Marcus spun and drove the metal restraint into the alien's throat with crushing force. Cartilage collapsed and green blood sprayed as the Valkyrie soldier fell, his plasma pistol dropping from nerveless fingers. 1 second gone. Marcus caught the pistol before it hit the ground and fired twice in rapid succession. Guard 2 took both shots in the chest and slammed backward against the corridor wall. The third guard spun around it. The sound. Reaching for his own weapon, but Marcus was already moving, closing the distance with terrifying speed. He killed the third guard with a single shot to the head. The alien collapsed in a heap, and Marcus was already running. 5 seconds gone. 3 enemies down. The ship's internal sensors detected the weapon's fire and triggered an alert. Alarms began to wail through the corridors, and Marcus knew he had very little time before the entire deck mobilized against him. But time was not something he needed much of. He needed 40 seconds, and he intended to use every single one. 2 guards burst through a doorway ahead of him. Marcus dropped to one knee and fired 4 shots in under a second. Both aliens fell, their weapons unfired. 10 seconds gone. 5 enemies down. He grabbed the plasma rifle from one of the bodies and kept moving. His feet pounded against the metal floor as he raced through corridors he had memorized days ago. 3 more guards appeared at an intersection, and Marcus used a wall for cover as he exchanged fire. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots. Each one found its mark with deadly precision. The Valkyrie were fast and strong, but they were trained to fight in units, not against a single attacker, moving faster than their tactics could adapt. 15 seconds gone. 8 enemies down. A door to his left slid open, and 4 more soldiers poured out with weapons raised. Marcus threw himself through them like a battering ram, using the butt of his rifle to crack skulls and break bones. They had expected him to keep his distance, to fight at range where their superior reflexes gave them advantage. They had not expected him to get close enough to smell their breath. He killed 3 of them in hand-to-hand combat before the 4th managed to raise his weapon. Marcus shot him in the face from point-blank range. 20 seconds gone. 12 enemies down. His rifle's power cell ran dry. He threw the weapon aside and grabbed a fallen guard's pistol. Sweat poured down his face and his lungs burned. But he did not slow down. He could not slow down. Every second he wasted was a second for the enemy to organize a response. 2 guards came at him from the right. Marcus shot one and used the body as a shield against the other's fire. He advanced behind the falling corpse, closing the distance until he was near enough to put his pistol against the alien's skull. The Valkyrie's yellow eyes went wide with terror in the instant before Marcus pulled the trigger. 28 seconds gone. 14 enemies down. He rounded a corner and found himself facing a group of 5 guards who had formed a defensive line. They opened fire immediately, and plasma bolts scorched the air around him. Marcus dove forward, rolling under their aim, and came up shooting. 3 fell to his pistol. The 4th he killed with a blade taken from one of the earlier guards, driving it through the soldier's eye socket. The 5th tried to run, and Marcus shot him in the back without hesitation. 35 seconds gone. 19 enemies down. The corridor ahead led to a junction that Marcus knew connected to the ship's communication array. 2 final guards stood at their posts, weapons raised, clearly terrified by what they could hear happening around them. They fired as Marcus appeared. 1 shot grazed his shoulder, burning through flesh and muscle. He stumbled, but did not fall. His body was running on something beyond adrenaline now, something primal and unstoppable. He returned fire with cold efficiency. 2 shots, 2 kills. 45 seconds. 21 enemies dead. Marcus leaned against the wall and allowed himself 3 breaths. Green blood mixed with red on his uniform, and his hands shook from exertion. But he was smiling, not the cold smile of a predator, but the genuine expression of a man who had just accomplished exactly what he set out to do. Reinforcements would be coming. The entire ship would be hunting him within minutes. But Marcus was not trying to escape. He had a different objective in mind. He accessed the door panel beside him and stepped into the communication array. Banks of computers lined the walls, all of them connected to the most powerful broadcast equipment the Valkyrie had ever built. This was the ship's nerve center for long-range communication, capable of reaching every vessel in the fleet and every world in Valkyrie space. Perfect. Marcus sat down at the main console and began working. His fingers flew across the alien keyboard with practiced familiarity. He had studied Valkyrie technology during his years of combat, learned enough of their systems to manipulate basic functions. "Computer," he said, "prepare for live broadcast on all military frequencies Valkyrie and Terran." The system acknowledged his command. A camera activated and focused on his bloody face. Behind him, he could hear the sounds of soldiers massing in the corridor. They were afraid to rush the room, afraid of what might be waiting for them. The legendary Valkyrie warrior spirit had failed against a single wounded human, and now they hesitated. Like frightened animals. Marcus checked the broadcast status and saw that connections were establishing across the entire sector. Millions of viewers would see what he was about to say, both human and alien. He straightened in his chair and looked directly into the camera. The time had come to send a message that neither species would ever forget. 72 hours passed in the belly of the Valkyrie warship, and Marcus Cole endured every second with cold determination. They came for him on the first day with neural probes, thin needles that slid into his skull and sent electric fire through his brain. The pain was beyond anything he had ever experienced. It felt like his mind was being torn apart and reassembled over and over again. But Marcus had trained for this. He knew how to compartmentalize agony, how to lock away the parts of himself that mattered and let the rest burn. The Valkyrie interrogator was a thin creature with pale scales and eyes like black glass. He watched Marcus writhe and scream with scientific interest. The human nervous system is remarkably sensitive. The interrogator observed to his assistants, "We should have results within hours." But the hours passed, and Marcus gave them nothing. He screamed when the pain demanded it, but he never spoke a word they wanted to hear. When they asked about Earth's hidden shipyards, he recited old poems from his childhood. When they demanded the locations of Terran fleet positions, he sang military marching songs at the top of his lungs. By the second day, the interrogator's confidence had begun to crack. "Increase the intensity," he ordered. "The human must have a breaking point." They tried sensory deprivation next, sealing Marcus in a tank of warm liquid that blocked all light and sound. Humans were social creatures, the Valkyrie believed, and isolation would shatter his mind faster than any physical torture. Marcus floated in the darkness for 16 hours. But instead of breaking, he used the time to rest. His trainers had taught him to find peace in emptiness. When the world gave you nothing, you built your own reality inside your head. Marcus walked through memories of Earth, the green forests of his childhood home, the faces of friends long dead, the laughter of his daughter before the war took her mother. He held onto these images like anchors in a storm. When they pulled him from the tank, the interrogators saw something in Marcus's eyes that made the alien take a step backward. "Why do you not break?" the creature hissed. "Every species has a limit. Every mind can be conquered." Marcus simply smiled at him. On the third day, they tried chemical agents, drugs designed to dissolve willpower and force the truth from unwilling lips. The Valkyrie had used these compounds to crack the minds of a dozen different species. Surely human biology could not resist what had conquered so many others. But human biology was stranger than they knew. Evolution had built mankind on a world where everything wanted to kill them. Poisons, predators, diseases, radiation. Earth had thrown every horror imaginable at humanity, and humanity had survived. Their bodies carried genetic memories of a million different threats, and their systems adapted with frightening speed. The drugs made Marcus dizzy. They made him see colors that did not exist and hear voices that whispered in languages he did not understand. But they did not make him talk. Impossible. The interrogator muttered as he reviewed the test results. His brain chemistry is actively fighting the compounds. It is like his body knows how to resist substances it has never encountered before. Overseer Crethon received these reports with growing frustration. He had captured what he believed was a valuable intelligence asset. And so far the human had given them nothing but screams and songs. His reputation was at stake. The High Command expected results, and failure would mean disgrace. Finally, on the evening of the third day, Crethon decided to handle the interrogation personally. The cell door slid open, and the massive overseer entered like a storm made flesh. He had to duck his head to fit through the frame, his armor body filling the small space. Marcus sat in the corner, chained to the wall, his face swollen and bloody from days of abuse. "Human," Crethon growled. "I grow tired of these games." Marcus lifted his head and studied the alien with calm eyes. Despite everything they had done to him, there was no fear in his gaze, only a cold, calculating intelligence. "Then stop playing them," Marcus replied. "Kill me and be done with it." Crethon's tail lashed with anger. He crossed the cell in 2 massive strides and grabbed Marcus by the throat, lifting him off the ground as if he weighed nothing. "You do not give orders here," the overseer snarled. "You are prey, and I am the predator. Your role is to submit and provide what we demand." Marcus struggled to breathe in the iron grip, but somehow, incredibly, he managed to laugh. It was not a broken laugh or the hysteria of a shattered mind. It was genuine amusement, as if Crethon had just told a funny joke at a social gathering. The sound echoed off the cell walls, and for the first time in his long military career, the overseer felt something he had never experienced before when facing a human. He felt uncertain. "Why do you laugh?" Crethon demanded. "What could possibly amuse you in this situation?" Marcus met the alien's yellow eyes without flinching. Blood dripped from his lips as he spoke. "Because you still do not understand what you have captured," Marcus said. "You look at me and see a soft creature from a gentle world, but you could not be more wrong." Crethon loosened his grip slightly, curious despite himself. "My people spent 10,000 years killing each other before we ever knew you existed," Marcus continued. "We perfected violence the way your kind perfected nothing. While your ancestors were learning to build fires, mine were inventing new ways to murder their neighbors." The overseer's eyes narrowed. This was not the speech of a broken prisoner. "We have wars that kill millions in single battles," Marcus pressed on. "We have weapons that can burn entire cities to ash in seconds. We created death on a scale your people cannot imagine. And we did it to each other, not to aliens, not to enemies from the stars, but to our own brothers and sisters." He leaned forward against Crethon's grip, and his smile grew wider. "I have been counting your guards since I came aboard. 21 soldiers on this deck, rotating every 15 minutes. I know their patrol patterns. I know their weapons. I know exactly how long it would take me to kill every single one of them." Crethon felt a chill run down his spine. This human was not bluffing. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," Marcus whispered. "Because now I know everything I need to know about your ship, and you have no idea what a Grim Reaper can do." The overseer threw Marcus against the wall and stepped back. His hand went to his weapon instinctively. "You are chained," Crethon said. "You are wounded and surrounded by enemies. Your threats mean nothing." Marcus slumped against the wall and closed his eyes. His smile never wavered. "Keep telling yourself that," he said. "It will make what comes next so much more satisfying." Crethon stormed out of the cell, but the human's laughter followed him down the corridor. He could not shake the feeling that somewhere along the way, the roles of predator and prey had been reversed. And deep in his cell, Marcus Cole began to finalize his plan. The red light on the camera blinked twice and then held steady. Marcus Cole knew that his face was now being transmitted across the stars to audiences he would never see. He took a moment to wipe some of the blood from his lips. He wanted to look fierce, not pathetic. The wound on his shoulder still burned, but he pushed the pain to the back of his mind where it could not touch him. Behind him, the bodies of Velkari soldiers lay scattered across the communications center, silent witnesses to what he had accomplished. "This message is for the Velkari Dominion," Marcus began. His voice was rough from days of screaming under torture, but it carried clearly through the broadcast system. Across the sector, Velkari commanders paused their operations to watch. Human resistance cells gathered around hidden screens to see what was happening. The broadcast signal was strong enough to reach dozens of worlds, and within minutes, hundreds of millions of beings were tuning in. "For 30 years, your people have been at war with humanity," Marcus continued. "You have burned our colonies and killed our soldiers and taken our worlds. Through it all, you have believed one simple thing: that humans are weak, that we are soft prey meant to be conquered." He leaned forward in his chair, and his eyes seemed to pierce through the camera itself. "You are wrong." In the corridors outside, Overseer Crethon listened to the broadcast with growing horror. He had thought the human contained, thought his ship was secure. Now he stood among the bodies of his warriors and watched his prisoner address the galaxy. "You have spent 3 decades wondering why you cannot beat us," Marcus said. "Your generals have studied our tactics. Your scientists have analyzed our biology. Your philosophers have debated our nature. And none of them have found the answer." He gestured at the carnage around him, the blood, the bodies, the evidence of what one wounded man could accomplish against overwhelming odds. "This is what a single human can do when you make him angry," Marcus declared. 21 of your finest warriors, dead in 45 seconds. I was chained. I was tortured. I was outnumbered and outgunned. And it did not matter. On human colony worlds, people began to cheer. In military bases across Terran space, soldiers gathered around screens with tears in their eyes. For years they had been losing this war, watching their civilization crumble under the weight of Velkari aggression. Now, finally, someone was fighting back. "You want to know our secret?" Marcus asked the camera. "You want to understand why humanity keeps fighting when logic says we should surrender? I am going to tell you." He stood up from his chair and faced the camera fully. Blood dripped from his wounds, but he stood straight and proud like a soldier on parade. "We do not surrender because we cannot. It is not in our nature. It is not in our blood. It is not possible for us. You can burn our worlds, we will rebuild them. You can kill our children, we will have more. You can destroy everything we have built, and we will start again from nothing." His voice rose with each sentence, filling with a passion that transcended his wounds and exhaustion. "We are the children of a death world," Marcus continued. "Earth did not coddle us. Earth did not protect us. We evolved surrounded by predators and poisons and disasters that would have wiped out any other species. Every generation of humanity had to fight just to survive, and we won every single time." Crethon watched the broadcast and felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had faced human soldiers before, but he had never understood them until this moment. "Your ancestors lived on a paradise world," Marcus said. "Warm sun, gentle rains, prey that could not fight back. You became predators because the universe made it easy. But we became something worse. We became survivors." He began to pace in front of the camera, his movements sharp despite his injuries. "You have claws. We have tools. You have scales. We have armor. You have instinct. We have imagination. Everything you were given, we had to invent for ourselves. And that made us stronger than you can possibly understand. On the Velkari homeworld, the High Command watched in stunned silence. They had never heard a human speak this way before. For 30 years, they had seen humanity as little more than a pest to be exterminated, and now they were seeing something entirely different. Here is what your leaders never told you, Marcus continued. Before we met your species, we spent 10,000 years killing each other. We have fought wars that killed millions in single battles. We have created weapons capable of destroying entire planets. We invented cruelty on a scale that your people cannot imagine. He stopped pacing and faced the camera directly. And we did this to ourselves, to our own brothers and sisters, to people who shared our blood and our language and our gods. If we were willing to do that to the people we love, imagine what we are willing to do to the people we hate. Marcus allowed those words to hang in the air for a long moment. I am Sergeant Marcus Cole of the 77th Terran Shock Infantry, he declared. I have killed 37 of your soldiers since you captured me, and I am not done yet. But here's the thing you need to understand. I am not special. He pointed at the camera as if he could reach through it and grab his audience by the throat. I am the kindest thing humanity will ever send you. I am a soldier trained to follow rules, bound by codes of conduct, restricted by laws of war. But if you continue this conflict, if you push humanity to the breaking point, you will not get soldiers. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow felt louder than a shout. You will get monsters. You will get the darkness that lives in every human heart, the same darkness that made us kill each other for 10,000 years. And when that darkness is unleashed against your species instead of our own, there will be no mercy, no negotiation, no surrender. Crethon ordered his soldiers to breach the communication center, but they hesitated at the door. None of them wanted to be the first through. This war ends one of two ways, Marcus concluded. Either you make peace with humanity and learn to live alongside us in this galaxy, or we destroy you so completely that even your memory is erased from history. Those are your only options. He straightened his shoulders and looked into the camera one final time. My name is Sergeant Marcus Cole. I am a soldier of the Terran Coalition. And today, I showed you exactly what one human can do. Tomorrow, you might find out what all of us can do together. He smiled, that same cold, confident smile that had unnerved Overseer Crethon in the interrogation cell. Think carefully before you continue this war. Pray you never meet the rest of us. The broadcast ended. Marcus sat back down in his chair and picked up a fallen weapon. He could hear the soldiers gathering outside, working up the courage to rush the room. He checked the power cell still half charged. Come on then, he murmured to himself. Let us finish this. The door exploded inward, and Marcus Cole raised his weapon for the last time. Marcus Cole died 3 hours after his broadcast ended, but his death was not a quiet one. When the Velkari soldiers finally breached the communication center, they expected to find a wounded man ready for capture. Instead, they found a warrior who refused to stop fighting. Marcus killed 7 more of them before a plasma bolt finally brought him down. And even then, he managed to take 1 more with him as he fell. Overseer Crethon stood over the human's body and felt something he had never experienced before in the presence of a dead enemy. He felt respect. Burn the body with honor, he ordered his surviving soldiers. This one earned a warrior's farewell, but the damage was already done. The broadcast had spread across the galaxy like wildfire, and nothing could stop it now. On human worlds, people watched the recording over and over again. They memorized Marcus's words and repeated them to each other like prayers. Recruitment offices that had been nearly empty for years suddenly found themselves overwhelmed with volunteers. Young men and women lined up by the thousands, all of them wanting to be like the man who had laughed in the face of death. The military high command saw morale skyrocket overnight. Soldiers who had been ready to give up found new purpose. Marcus Cole had reminded them of something they had forgotten. Humanity was not a species that surrendered, not a species that broke, not a species that could be conquered. "I am the kindest thing humanity will ever send you," became a battle cry. Soldiers painted the words on their armor and their ships. It was shouted in training camps and whispered in trenches. It became the most famous phrase of the entire war. But the broadcast had an even greater effect on the Valkyrie. The High Command received thousands of reports from commanders across their empire. Soldiers who had watched the broadcast were showing signs of fear for the first time. Officers who had once dismissed humanity as prey were now questioning their tactics and their assumptions. Overseer Crethon was summoned before the Council of Scales to explain what had happened aboard his ship. He stood in the great chamber where the rulers of the Valkyrie Dominion made their decisions, and he told them the truth. "We underestimated them," he admitted. "We saw their soft skin and their small bodies, and we assumed they were weak. But weakness of form does not mean weakness of spirit." The council listened in troubled silence. "This human was chained and wounded and alone," Crethon continued. "He had been tortured for 3 days, and yet he fought with a ferocity I have never seen. He was not afraid of us. He was not afraid of death. He was not afraid of anything." One of the council members leaned forward. She was old, her scales faded with age, but her eyes were still sharp. "What do you recommend?" she asked. Crethon hesitated before answering. What he was about to say went against everything his people believed. "I recommend we consider peace," he said. The chamber erupted in outrage. Warriors shouted insults and accusations. But Crethon stood his ground. "We have been fighting humanity for 30 years, he continued once the noise died down. "We have superior numbers, superior technology, superior soldiers. And yet we are no closer to victory than when we started. Every world we take costs us more than it cost them. Every battle weakens us while they grow stronger." He thought of Marcus Cole's smile, of the absolute confidence in those human eyes. The human was right, Crethon admitted. "If we continue this war, we will not face soldiers. We will face monsters. And I do not believe we can win against monsters." The debate lasted for weeks. Some council members wanted to intensify the war, to crush humanity before their morale could recover. Others listened to Crethon's warnings and argued for negotiation. The recording of Marcus Cole played on screens throughout the Dominion, and with each viewing, more Valkyrie began to understand what they were truly fighting. A year after the broadcast, the tide of war began to turn. UN forces launched a massive counteroffensive that retook 3 systems in 6 months. They fought with a fury that caught the Valkyrie completely off guard. It was as if the entire species had been awakened from a long sleep, and they were angry. Valkyrie commanders reported strange behavior from their human opponents. Soldiers would charge into impossible situations rather than retreat. Pilots would fly their damaged ships directly at enemy vessels rather than eject. It was not suicide, it was something far more dangerous. It was faith. Humanity believed they could win now. Marcus Cole had shown them what was possible, and they refused to accept anything less. 2 years after the broadcast, the Valkyrie High Command requested a ceasefire. The negotiations were long and difficult. Too much blood had been spilled for easy reconciliation. But eventually, a treaty was signed, not a surrender, but a genuine peace agreement that recognized both species as equals. After the signing ceremony, the Valkyrie ambassador made an unusual request. He asked to visit Earth to see the world that had produced creatures like Marcus Cole. The request was granted, and he traveled to humanity's homeworld with a small delegation. What he found there changed his understanding of the universe. He visited the battlefields of ancient human wars, places where millions had died fighting each other. He saw the trenches and the bunkers and the memorials. He learned about weapons that could destroy cities in seconds and plagues that had killed entire continents. He walked through museums filled with the artifacts of human violence, swords and spears and guns and bombs. He read history books that documented 10,000 years of warfare, genocide, and atrocity. And finally, he understood. Humanity was not strong despite their violence. They were strong because of it. They had been fighting since before they could write, since before they had cities or laws or civilization. War was not something they had learned from others. It was something that came from within. The ambassador returned to his homeworld and delivered his report to the Council of Scales. It was a single sentence that would be remembered for generations. Never give humanity a reason to unite against us. They are not prey, but the apex predators of a death world. And we were fools to wake them. Marcus Cole's name was carved into monuments on a dozen human worlds. His face appeared on recruitment posters and memorial walls. Children grew up hearing stories about the soldier who had laughed at his captors and killed 21 warriors in 45 seconds. But his greatest legacy was something that could not be measured in statues or stories. He had reminded humanity of what they truly were. He had shown them that courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. He had proven that one person could make a difference, that one voice could change the course of history. And perhaps most importantly, he had taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The humans were not to be underestimated, not to be conquered, not to be pushed into corners. Because when you pushed humanity into a corner, they did not surrender. They pushed back, and they did not stop pushing until their enemies were dust and memory. In the end, Sergeant Marcus Cole got exactly what he wanted. He gave humanity hope, and he gave their enemies fear. The laughing soldier had earned his place in history, and his legend would echo through the stars for 1,000 years to come.